Not every horror film is loved by all. Today, we're diving into one-star reviews of my favorite horror films that I found on Letterboxd. So let's get started. Hey, how you doing? It is I, the Terrific Lady, otherwise known as Brandy, and welcome to Retro Horror School. And a happy Friday to you. Today's video is going to be a different kind of video. It is going to be a reaction discussion style video to one-star reviews on Letterboxd. What I did is I went on Letterboxd. I picked 10 of my absolute favorite horror films. I went to the popular reviews on Letterboxd and just looked at the one-star reviews and found the one that resonated the most with me. Rather than roasting these reviews, I want to show that we can have polite discussions centered around one-star reviews of horror movies that you love. And I am always for respectful discussion, whether we like a thing or whether we don't like a thing. There's too much butting heads in the horror community and too much gatekeeping. I hope to show with this video that polite and respectful and yeah, even fun discussions can be had. So here we go. At any time during this video, if you have any thoughts about any of the one-star reviews that I read, drop them in the comments below. First up, we have one of my favorite zombie movies, 28 Days Later. It is an independent film that came out in 2002 and that is set in the UK and is about a virus known as the rage virus that infects and takes over quite a bit of the population of the UK. The movie centers on Jim, played by Cillian Murphy, and he meets up with a group of people and they're all just trying to, survive and live their lives the best way they know how in this new world that is formed. Now, I love this movie since I first watched it in 2002. It is really hard to find on streaming, and I ended up getting a physical copy of it for myself. But let's see what this one-star review had to say about the movie. Number one, certified zombie hater here. Honestly, one of the worst genres of all time. Why does this movie look so low quality? So pixelated, it hurts my eyes. They're not even like real zombies anymore in this movie. They're just really angry people. Like, hello? It's a zombie, you fools, brains and shit. Not this running around and screaming stuff. Bleh. I have to wonder if this reviewer actually hates zombie movies or if he just didn't like this movie. And with the way it's shot, yes, it would look like low quality on a very high quality HDTV, but it didn't really bother me when it came out in 2002 because the TVs were of lower quality than they are now. And it's more noticeable now, but it still really doesn't bother me. And no, they're not just really angry people. The virus may not kill them, but they are still in a zombie-like state. There's a big debate going on as to whether this is a zombie movie or this is not a zombie movie. I think it's a zombie movie. The rage virus just created different types of zombies. I don't know your thoughts on that, but that's the thoughts that I always had on the zombies in 28 Days Later. Next up, we have Alien, a movie that came out in 1979 and in about 5 years is going to celebrate its 50th anniversary. The movie is basically Dracula set in space because its inspiration was the Captain's Log chapter from the novel Dracula. It is about a crew on the Nostromo. They end up intercepting a distress signal. The distress signal leads them to this planet. They find a derelict spacecraft filled with a bunch of eggs. One of the eggs hatches and the thing inside infects a member of the crew, and from that member of the crew spouts forth this xenomorph, and the remaining members of the crew have to survive this thing that they have no idea what it is and no idea how to defeat it. Now, I have to admit that it took me quite a few watches to warm up to this film, and now I absolutely love it. But not everybody feels the same way I do. For instance, this one-star review from Letterboxd says, sometimes if you hear something is a classic over and over, you feel obligated to give it a higher rating than what it deserves. It may have been a grandiose visual achievement in 1979, but with what felt like a full 10 minutes of dialogue and a full 3 minutes of the actual alien killing people. This movie is literally people slowly walking with corridors and computers going beep bloop, bleep bloop for an hour and 50 minutes. This is just a visual template for Blade Runner and nothing more. Well, I will say I had a little bit of the same sentiments about this movie at first. I was watching it just because I heard that it was a classic and that I heard it was good, and I didn't like it the first time around because I too thought it was boring for much of the same reasons that this person did. That's like, there's barely any dialogue, and geez, like where's all the action? I want to see the alien slaughtering and killing people. And the alien did slaughter and kill people, but the main focus of this movie is on survival. So I went into it with different expectations, much like I think that this person went into the movie with different expectations. But once I gave it a chance, reset, and readjusted my expectations, what I found is a very awesome, slow burn horror slasher in space. Because that's what Alien is. It's basically a slasher in space, and I really enjoy it. Next up, we have Candyman. Don't say his name 5 times. Candyman is about a graduate student named Helen Lyle who is doing her thesis and stumbles across the story of Candyman and decides to focus her thesis entirely on him. She doesn't really believe in the urban legend behind Candyman, so with her friend watching, Helen ends up saying Candyman in the mirror 5 times and then not right away. But eventually, Candyman ends up kind of stalking Helen and messing up her life. That's the best synopsis that I can give of that movie without really giving too much away. I first saw this movie 5 years ago, back in 2019. I had heard a lot about it, and it always had my curiosity. I knew it was based on a story by Clive Barker called The Forbidden, and it had always been on my radar, but I had added it to my long list of films that were always on my Netflix queue. And then one night, I just decided to watch it. Why not? I was utterly amazed at its brilliance. However, this 1-star review begs to differ. I feel like I shouldn't have been difficult to not mess up this premise. They did. They messed it up. Does Candyman break through walls or just show up? I couldn't follow. At least give us some more hook kills or something. Penalized half a star for involving a baby in a horror movie, as is my policy. Well, Candyman does break through walls for mostly everybody that summons him. Helen was different, again, for a reason that I can't really say, or I'm going to spoil the movie. So there was a reason why he didn't come through right away for her. And again, I think expectations for this person is that they were wanting a slasher with a bunch of kills, and they were disappointed because, yeah, there were kills and yeah, they were brutal, but they were almost like punctuation points to the broader psychological story that was going on. And I could totally get the about having kids in horror movies. The only time I really want a kid in a horror movie is if they're a creepy evil child like in The Omen, but I could totally get that part of the review right there. But again, I think this person that reviewed it just went into it with certain slasher expectations. Next up, we have Carrie, which has always been one of my favorites ever since I was a teenager. It is a 1976 movie based on the book by Stephen King, where a young teenage girl, her telekinetic powers are awakened, and she is trying to figure out just what they are and how to use them. And sadly, a culmination of events, namely having to live with a nutty mother and being bullied at school, come to a head in a scene that is now iconic and part of pop culture, the prom scene. And you'll know what I'm talking about, even if you have not seen this movie. But what does this one-star review have to say about Carrie? Aside from some memorable visuals at the prom, this horror is quite mishandled. Sissy Spacek is great, but unfortunately nobody else is. Some of the editing is bizarre, like speeding up the tuxedo scene. The climax wasn't earned because the characters weren't fleshed out enough, and Carrie's powers weren't explained or explored enough. Disappointing. I'm wondering if this reviewer read the book before watching the movie, because yes, the book and the movie are two completely different experiences. There are elements of the book that this movie drew from, but there are quite a few differences. And yes, Sissy Spacek was great, but there were a lot of other characters that were great. William Katt, who played Tommy, I absolutely adored him. Piper Laurie, who was nominated for an Oscar for her role as Carrie's mother. You cannot get better than Piper Laurie in that role, just hands down. I do agree that some of the editing choices are a little strange. They're talking about the speeding up of the tuxedo scene in particular. And yeah, I always thought that was a little weird, and I don't know. Uh, they're also maybe talking about the split screen kind of view that they did at the prom, and I always figured that it was a 70s thing, and I really dig that 70s aesthetic, so it didn't bother me too much. I thought the characters were fleshed out enough, and as far as Carrie's powers not being explained or explored enough, I always took it as she's learning about her powers. She just received these powers and she is just learning about them along the way. So she is not going to be able to explain them or even really explore them all too much. That never really bothered me. And in a way, that helped me get into Carrie's shoes because we were learning and exploring right along with her to her limits and what she was capable of. It's a bummer they found the movie disappointing, but I didn't find the movie disappointing. Obviously, Event Horizon. Oh my God. This piece of brilliance, directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, has the crew of the Lewis and Clark taking a trip. Yeah, they're taking a trip. They're taking a trip to Neptune, where the Event Horizon, this ship that is capable of creating, I think, holes or tears in space time, has been found. And their job is to recover it, find out what the hell was going on, what happened to the crew, and what do you know? What happened to the crew was not good, and it was not nice. And they have to, because their ship is not working all too well, they have to figure out how to fix their ship and get the hell off of Event Horizon. If you play the game Dead Space, the game Dead Space is directly influenced by Event Horizon, so a lot of the vibe and the elements are the same from movie to game. Now, I can't remember when I first saw it, but whenever, I think it was not even 2, 3 years ago, but I fell in love with it. I absolutely fell in love with it. The love for this movie is not as strong with some people as it is with me. I rated this 3 stars when I first saw it in the 90s, as I liked the first half before it went into Hellraiser in space ripoff mode. The gothic designs of the spaceship is still badass, but this is honestly just fan fiction somebody dropped too much money into. Also, has anything been more 90s than when the Prodigy's funky shit started to play over the closing credits? Okay, I will agree with the whole funky shit song at the end of the credits. It is very 90s. It was a very strange choice to put as a song at the end. Even though funky shit did go down, it conflicted with the vibe of the movie, so that was odd. Yes, the spaceship is designed very well. I definitely agree with that, but Hellraiser in space? I never considered it Hellraiser in space. A lot of fans of this movie, and especially of Warhammer, considered this an unofficial prequel of sorts to Warhammer 40K, where humankind discovers something called the Warp and learns of the consequences of discovering it. So I could totally buy that. I've never seen this as Hellraiser in space. Hellraiser is something totally different than Event Horizon. My opinion, you can't really compare the two. Freddy versus Jason, one of my favorite horror comfort movies of all time. I find myself putting it on a lot whenever I'm sad, whenever I'm sick, whenever I'm just down in the dumps and just want a fun horror movie to watch. What the movie is about is in the title. It's Freddy Krueger versus Jason Voorhees, a movie that was many, many decades in the making by the time it finally came out. This 1-star review found this movie fun, but didn't rate it higher for some reason. Let's delve into this review. I fought everything in me not to give this 4 stars just for the Jason and Freddy fight scenes alone. I never laughed so much at anything in my whole life. Some of the fight scenes are funny especially when Freddy bangs Jason around the room like it's a pinball machine, because pinball noises are definitely being made. And there was the fight scene at the end. I don't think that they only fought like twice in the entire movie, if I remember correctly. I don't count the scene in the hall because Freddy dispatched of Jason pretty quickly. But if they're speaking of the scene where the pinball noises were made, then yeah, that was pretty funny. I don't know if I can give the movie 4 stars for that, but just, for the fight scenes and for that particular fight scene, but I definitely wouldn't give it 1. No way. Next up, we have the movie Seven, which is one of my absolute favorites and a movie I have fond memories for because it is the first rated R movie that I saw in theaters. Not gonna say too much about the plot, because I will spoil it if I do, but Brad Pitt is a new detective who was assigned to the same precinct as Morgan Freeman's character, and they are investigating a killer who kills his victims according to the 7 deadly sins. Pretty cool. Not everybody thinks it's cool. David Fincher does enjoy reveling in the deepest, darkest recesses of the human mind. With Seven, he delves into the susceptibility to evil and the corruptibility of the soul in decently crafted thriller shot with such a nauseatingly oppressive atmosphere and captured perversity that it makes the soul wilt a tad. Grimy, dirty, and unpleasant, but still manages to be goofy at times, especially in the finale, which really is hard to watch thanks to Brad Pitt's pitiful acting. One of Fincher's weakest, no doubt, but spine-chilling and well-made for the most part. Yeah, it's a movie that's dark and grungy and at times unpleasant, and it definitely does not have a happy ending. But I took the darkness and grunginess as just a nature of the part of the city that they were in. And when it comes to the ending, maybe this reviewer can't take it seriously because the what's in the box is now just a famous meme to the point of almost being silly.
What's in the box?
And if all you've seen is a meme or a humorous meme before you see a movie of this kind of seriousness, then yeah, you're probably not going to take that part seriously. I have to wonder if the reviewer only found that part goofy, or if there were other parts that he found goofy, or if he just thought Brad Pitt was goofy and his performance ruined the whole movie for him, and maybe that's why he gave it 1 star. I would have thought the most that if the reviewer thought the movie was well crafted and well structured, that they would have at least given it 3 stars out of 5 for that fact alone. But what can you do? A Terrifier, one of my absolute favorite slashers of all time, with one of my favorite horror killers, Art the Clown. And the storyline of Terrifier is that Art is stalking and killing people, and he has his sights set on 3 very specific people that he wants to stalk and kill, and that's what the movie is centered around. It's just Art stalking and killing people. It is a very typical slasher that has a simple, straightforward storyline and plot that is very 80s inspired and focuses a lot on gore and body count. This person is a slasher and a gore file just like me, and they did not care for this movie at all. Just goes to show that even for a slasher splatter fan like me, there's a limit. I've seen a divisive consensus on Terrifier since my first watch, so I was curious if maybe I'd see this in a new light. Nope, still a painful experience, and not just because of the outrageously gory kills. Barely a movie, barely a plot, no suspense, just a bunch of mean-spirited, tenuously linked gore, and the only character to speak of is its mute cipher of a killer clown, who gets a pass purely for his striking design and David Howard Thornton's unsettling physicality. I'm still interested in the sequel, but Terrifier is the slasher genre at its worst. Well, at its worst in your opinion. Let me just say that, at its worst in your opinion, because I'm sure there are a lot of people who place a completely different slasher and call it, oh, it's the worst. It's the worst movie of all time. It's the worst slasher movie of all time. But what is worst is subjective, and what is best is subjective. I mean, it's all subjective, but we can't have qualifiers as, oh, this is the worst horror movie of all time. It's more like, I think it's not that good. It needs to be along those lines. And yes, Art the Clown is absolutely awesome, but it sounds like they wanted more out of their slasher because they mentioned things like barely a movie, barely a plot, barely any suspense. So it looks like they were wanting more out of it. Again, their expectations differed from what they got. I didn't mind the simple storyline. With gore that is this over the top, you need it. You need a simple storyline to help complement the over the topness of the gore. The Burbs, one of my absolute favorite horror dark comedies. It is directed by Joe Dante and stars Tom Hanks. And Tom Hanks has some very strange neighbors who do things like run their very loud furnace at all hours of the night, throw squishy things into their garbage, go into their backyard and dig up grave-like holes so he and two of his other neighbors set out to investigate what's going on, and the results end up being very wacky. I love this movie since my mom showed it to me when I was a kid. I will always have a soft spot for it, and I always will. Not everybody has the same soft spot for this movie as me. Whoa, this movie is something. In my youth, I remember seeing this film at the video store advertised constantly, reliant entirely on Hanks's charisma and reputation. I've always been aware of this movie, assuming it would be fun. Not a single laugh. Relentlessly boring pseudo-Twilight Zone mystery. A ton of miscasting. Dern, Feldman, Fisher. Amazing talents, but performing in different films here. And a distracting, disjointed score. Even some odd camera work here and there. Strangely enough, I don't think the script is bad. It just wasn't serviced well. Hanks and the film editor do the Lord's work, but they can't salvage this. Ultimately, the failures of the film lie in the direction, but all my love for Carrie Fisher. This movie is fun and it is funny, so I would definitely have to disagree with that. Relentlessly pseudo-boring Twilight Zone mystery and miscasting? I don't know what the expectations were here, but yeah, it might have been inspired by Twilight Zone, but to me, that's not a bad thing. Twilight Zone with a comedic twist. And I love the casting in this movie. I thought everybody was just very quirky and played well off of each other. And I loved Joe Dante directing this film. I think that this film needed his touch and it needed the weirdness and the quirkiness, much like Gremlins needed his weirdness and his quirkiness behind the camera. This film definitely needed it too. So definitely going to have to agree to disagree with this review, especially. And last but not least, The Thing, one of not just my favorite horror films of all time, but one of my favorite films of all time, period. Hands down, case closed. It is 100% a perfect movie in my eyes, and you cannot convince me otherwise. No one-star review could ever convince me otherwise. And definitely not this one. When a fucking husky is better at acting than your entire cast, then you've got a problem. I'm just I don't get it. I felt nothing. I felt no tension or fear. I was waiting for it to end. Maybe it's just not my thing, but I can't get past the lack of character and substance. The practical effects are amazing. I cannot dispute that. Ah, the husky was good, but so was the rest of the cast. No tension, no tension, not knowing who's who and who could be the thing at like any possible moment and not being able to trust anybody. There's plenty of tension just like around this movie. I don't know what they're talking about. Yeah, maybe it just was not this person thing because I read this review and I'm like, did we even watch the same movie? Well, yeah, we probably didn't because differing perspectives. I watch it and I think it's just the bee's knees. They watch it and they're just like, ugh, I hated it. But at least we both like the practical effects because Rob Bottin, practical effects master. Practical effects master, these special effects still hold up to this day. So we could shake hands, this reviewer and I, on that point because at least we agree on that. And there we go. There are my reactions and discussions about the 1-star Letterboxd reviews of my favorite horror films of all time. What did you think about these 1-star reviews of these films? Did they shock you? Did they surprise you? Or were they expected? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want me to do another video like this where I react to more 1-star Letterboxd reviews, let me know in the comments below as well. Please give this video a like and a thumbs up and share this with fellow horror fans because it really does help. And if you're not already subscribed, please consider subscribing and hit that bell so you never, ever, ever miss a Retro Horror School class. I'm going to toss up some more videos here that I think you might like. And sadly, class is dismissed, everybody, for now. But I will see you next time. Bye.